So welcome to this video of Fivefold Fun. This is all based on a 16th century Ottoman minbar, or a range of them. And this is the construction which will lead to this first example. You can see that I've taken the tracing, forgive my blue spodges, but this tracing was taken from the one we just did and I've painted it here. I also constructed it fully and arrived at this. Now, this painting is pretty atrocious. Sorry, I think I'll have a go at it and try and fix it. And the reason being is this you might find difficult to paint because at a particular junction, so for example here, one shape meets two other shapes. At a particular junction here, one shape meets five other shapes. So this idea, usually in Islamic geometry, where you can alternate the colours and fill it like a chessboard, which we've done previously for fivefold patterns and in many other worlds, it's kind of thrown out the window for this, because if you were to go around alternating these and then alternating these, there'll be some where it might meet the same colour. So you've got to be a little bit more creative, hence this crazy mess. I also tried to experiment in terms of what I outlined in. So this one I outlined in a fine liner and this one a fine liner, but this is a sepia color and this is a black. So with black you get a certain boldness, and both of them I went over again with the fine liner. So I outlined it, painted it, and then outlined it again. I didn't intend to, it's just I wanted a sharper, cleaner finish because my painting was a little bit sloppy, don't tell anyone. Very unusual for me, I'm very neat and tidy. Okay, so that was the first set. So you can see already a few variations and a few difficulties. I then went back to this construction and I added these 5 corners of a pentagon. And that gives us the repeat at the center 5 times in the corners. So let's have a look at what happened. Now this one I haven't painted, I'm too scared because I keep messing up on my other painting. So it's a pentagonal circular arrangement, and let's put that there. And the tracing again was taken from the drawing, and oh, look at that, isn't that beautiful? So this isn't necessarily as I've seen it in a mosque. It's in the mosque in Istanbul, but it's repeated in a big circle. So this tiling carries on, and then it's cropped into a larger circle, and all done in beautiful stonework. But this variation allows you to identify the triangle that's being repeated. So what I did was I took from the original construction one triangle. I don't know if you can see, so just that one triangle, and then I rotated the tracing paper, took another triangle, and then I folded the tracing paper and got this repeat. So this is within the drawing, and then I tiled it in a rectangular fashion. So it's a little bit different, whereas one is surrounded by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in this case. When you do it as a circular, I hope you can see, it's 1 surrounded by 5, so it's a subtle and slight difference. And on first glance sometimes you're like, well, what's the difference? You can't tell, but it is different. Anyway, this I painted differently because this is my go-to way of painting. I don't have to worry about adjacent shapes being the same color because I can just do the little gap between them. So I painted it all with the pencil lines there, and then I erased them to really make the white lines pop. And also, I'm a bit of a rushed painter. I don't know what's come over me recently. Well, it's always been the case, to be honest. But this, you can see your flaws. And probably if you look carefully, there's plenty of flaws. But it's very effective as an overall look. And if you take your time, please take your time, and paint it carefully and slowly, you can have a lot more evenness in your white lines and your gaps. And it can look absolutely stunning. So whether you paint it like this, or whether you outline it in a gold, or whether you do this one. I don't think I'm going to suggest you do this one, it's a bit messy. But yeah, whichever one you do, really I look forward to your solutions and how you paint them, because it was tricky indeed. So we're going to begin with a blank sheet of paper and draw a circle and divide it into 10. If you wish to draw this as one single motif and not tile it, then you can pick a radius as large as you like. When dividing a circle into 10, it's important not to max out your compass. Just take it to a little bit smaller because there'll be two maneuvers where you actually increase it twice. So you don't want it to be the biggest it can be. So for example, my compass, I'm setting just over 11 as the radius. So once I've drawn my circle centered carefully, I'm going to put 2 marks with the same radius above and below. And then I'm going to open up my radius a little bit more. And if, say, you are reaching the maximum of your compass, just feed your pen or pencil through a little bit more, and then you can get an even bigger radius. Sometimes when I've been drawing on a board or to teach, I fed it through all the way to the very end. So sometimes without an extension bar, you can get big radiuses. Draw in the vertical. I use a pencil or a mechanical pencil just to position my ruler, because if I put it down with an ink pen, then what will happen is that it'll leave little ink blots, and then that'll get annoying. So doing it like this with a mechanical pencil or anything that doesn't leave any ink, so just a plain old pencil, is very useful. So we've got a vertical and 1 mark on the right hand side. So if you put your compass point at the 12 o'clock position, that'll give your pen something to try and fall into. And so this is the radius we're going to find. And then once you've got that radius there, measure it here and mark it on the horizontal. And then also put your compass point in there. And now you're going to adjust it open a little bit more. And this is the make and break of the whole drawing. So will it go round? And I've said this before in my videos, I don't really have any preparation as to what it might do. So that one is a massive gap. So mine is over by a lot. What we've got to do is reduce it by 1/5. Let me just take that and I'm going to change it by about 1/5 of that. And I'm going to mark it with a longer line each time. And then that will distinguish, hopefully, my false and naughty lines from my correct lines. And let's see. And we have success. So sometimes actually the failure is really useful. Now I'm going to do a couple of things. I'm going to put a cross by this and a cross by this. And that now is the 1/5 of the circumference. So I stepped it round from the top. I'm going to step it round from the bottom. Pretty good. Now I'm working in pen. I've got a thick line, so something like that might not be acceptable in a thin pencil, but for me that is fine. So now we can divide our circle into 10. If I just number the points. Okay, all right, let's put in our 10 divisions. And always try to lean over your ruler. So if my head's in the way, it's so that I can show you. I want to get a good view to make sure it goes through the center. And, you know, standing up, leaning over, whatever you need to do to get the line exactly where it ought to be. Because, you know, the drawing of the line is the, stuck in, is the bit that tells you you've got it. The putting the marks down is kind of the half step, but if you draw a line that doesn't even go through those points, then you're a bit stuck. Okay, so now we can begin to draw what we need for this Ottoman pattern. Okay, so the first thing is we're going to do a pentagon, which goes from 10 to 2 to 4 to 6 to 8 and back to 10. We're going to draw a second pentagon, 1 to 3 to 5 to 7 to 9 and back to 1. And this underlying grid has a lot of lines, and in a way I deliberately involved many lines because I want you to see inherently in the lines that are just all there naturally, we are uncovering a grid. We're going to start at the top, okay, at number 10, and we're going to look at it connecting to every other point. So therefore it's already connected to 8, connect it to 7, connect it to 6, it's already connected to 5, and then to 4, and then to 3. So if you look at 10, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines from it. So I need the same for 1. So connecting it to all the other points. You can get into a nice rhythm and system doing this. And I imagine there's different ways to do this. Right, let's do them all. And as you get further around, you start seeing some are already drawn, so it's just about filling in the ones you don't have. It's very easy to miss lines. So even when you think you're done, what I do is I do a little scan of every single point to make sure that they have this fan of lines leaving it. So this grid, you could arrive at this quite naturally and organically, and from it you can see how much of the geometry we do is inherently in these kind of pre-existing, naturally found, easily found grid. Okay, so what I want you to look for is these small triangles at the center, and they are surrounded by kites. And what we're going to do is the width of the kite, we're going to connect to each other. So try to get the best fit, but don't worry too much. I always say follow through the whole diagram and then do it again. So the second time you do it, you'll be well aware, and every single line you draw will be far more careful. Okay, so we are going to now set up. So we've got at the center a decagon. There will be a decagon in 5 of the corners. Let's put it together. So if you put your line parallel to the 9 to 4 line, and then just pull it to the next intersections of our decagon, so these two, you'll see it lines up with the tip of a kite here, and you just need to draw a line which is perpendicular to the 8 to 10 line, and then do the same on the other side. So that's all we're drawing from this. So we'll do it between the 8 and 10, between 10 and 2, between 2 and 4, and so on. We're next going to draw a proportioning circle. If you concentrate on your central decagon, we're going to connect this point to the one that is 4 away. So it's 90 degrees plus 1. And I'm going to draw this quite maximally. When you do this, feel free to just indicate or find the marks you need. But for teaching purposes, I'm after this point and this point. Draw it just once in the central circle. However, later on this will be in the 5 corners as well. You can actually, I'll show you, so a little bit of a preemptive strike here. It's not war, it's just geometry. Okay, so this is the radius I'm after. So my compass is centered here and it's hitting this point and this point. But if you take it to any of your numbered points, it will also hit this and this. So every single sort of a corner, or sorry, every numbered point will have the same radius. Now this isn't in my little drawings, but you can see how handy it is. So in a way we didn't need to draw that line, but I just wanted to show you it does exist at the center as well. So hence me doing it maximally, you can do it minimally. If you look at the center, it's divided into 10, but we want to divide it into 20. So we know this angle we need to split in half. So if you just look beyond the decagon, there is a corner of a triangle that would split it in half. If you line up with the center and the other side, you can do the same. Now, we're not going to draw these lines fully. We're going to draw them where we need them. So we're going to start on the circle and just go out to that point. And again, this might throw up a little bit of a, oh, this is not lining up perfectly. So again, carry on. And I always say, draw the whole thing again, get plenty of practice. If your expectation is for your geometry to be perfect first time, I think that is misleading and you need to manage your expectations. All right, next we're going to draw a pentagon, but we're not going to draw it fully. We're going to draw the bits that we need. I'm going to use these purple points that are just touching the circle. I'm going to connect one to the one that's 1 away and line them up, but look how I'm stopping, like so. So we have the beginnings of something, and then to fill in the gaps, we're going to do the other pentagon and just draw the parts we need in each of the sections. And they should start meeting up with each other, but drawing it this small might kind of throw up some, why do I keep saying throw up? It might show some inaccuracies, but guess what I'm going to say? Just carry on. Oh my God, I've got an annoying singing voice. just carry on. What we're going to do now is go on to tracing paper. Okay, so now we're going to attach some tracing paper. Because this underlying grid leads to maybe a couple of variations, I want to just show them and reuse the grid. So we're going to firstly do the single circular motif, and I'm using a 2B pencil, and the first thing I'm going to pick out is the circle within which the pattern lies, and this circle is centered at our center, and it just touches the sides of those two overlapping pentagons at each number. So check it in several places because I really want it to make a solid mark. So sometimes I hold it in the way that I say don't hold it. Hey, looking good. And rather than detach something to have a look, all you need to do is just insert your hand and you can lift off the tracing paper and you can see what's going on. Okay, now let's put in the pattern lines. So we're going to do the 10 divisions and we're going to stop and start at the circle. And I'm pressing quite firmly, and I will make sure I keep my pencil sharp. And if you keep rotating your pencil, that helps prolong its tip. So you don't always use the same side, but it is getting blunt, no denying that. We're going to go over the little lines that we put in, the short little ones, and now you'll see how they're being used, because right now it just seems a little bit, I think, cryptic to say that these are, you know, important, because you can't see how they figure. But all the lines we need are here. I'm just drawing on top of existing lines. Connect them to each other, and it might seem, well, it's like a little bit of a star, but within this star, I guess it's a 10-pointed star, there's a lot of other shapes that are hidden. And so this is tenfold, so we expect to see pentagons and decagons, but then we will see other shapes as well, because the power or the beauty of tenfold is that pentagons do not tile on a 2D surface without any gaps, nor do decagons. So what are those magical, amazing shapes in between that we kind of don't really have common names for? Okay, so we have our star, and you can see something's happening at the corners, or sorry, and around the sides, but again, it's not fully visible. Connect the tips of those purple lines to one another, and again, I feel like the things that I'm drawing are kind of cryptic, because working like this is showing some of the beauty, but not all of it. And now finally we're going to go over the initial decagon that we drew. And this final shape, well, it's not the final shape, but this shape kind of reveals a bit more as to what exists around it. So we'll have a good little chat about it. Well, while I say chat, I'll talk to myself. You guys can listen. Okay, so what we have is a decagon, and there are actually 5 partial decagons around the edges. So can you see this is 1, 2 sides of a decagon, full sides, and then a bit of a side, and then a bit of a side. Then here we have a shield shape, but it's only half of it. And then we have a partial decagon again, then that shield shape, but it's been cut in half. Decagon, shield, and so on. And what's between the decagons and the shields and the central decagon? It's a pentagon. Now, it doesn't help me having another decagon surrounding it, but it's there. And this underlying grid, if we exclude this line, and if we exclude the radial lines, that underlying grid of polygons, so pentagon, decagon, and the shield shape, it can be found to exist under many patterns. And having an underlying grid of polygons is a way to appreciate and draw, especially by computer, patterns, as opposed to drawing it with proportioning circles. We're going to put in the fiddly little 10-pointed star at the center. Now we're going to go on top of our purple lines, working our way around. And be kind of considerate of the fact that your central 10 pointed star is divided into 10 kites, and these kites is the tips of them that have the lines extending into them. They don't cut the kites in half. And when you're drawing this, you can easily get carried away and draw radial lines through the drawing, but just try and always look for those 10 kites, and there's the tips of them that are being connected elsewhere. And then lastly, from these points, and if you notice, can you see it's the pentagon that's got 1, 2, 3 lines shooting off from it. We're just going to add in the other 2 from each one. So these pentagons are being divided into 5 kites, and these lines go from the center of the pentagon through the midpoint of each of its sides, and then to either the shield or the decagon outside of it. You could do this 2 at a time. Let me show you what I mean. So this could be done at the same time as this. Very efficient. But sometimes I get a little bit, what's the word? Confused. Well, not really, but a little bit. Okay, so there we have the full pattern. And its center is the only one that behaves like that. So although there's decagons along the side, they're not doing what is happening at the center, although they could. So that's going to be our second pattern. So this is our circular single motif. Now we're going to do another one. So now that I've removed that tracing paper, we're going to take what we've done at the center and duplicate it and do it in the corners. For that we need this central circle, and like I said, although we can take the measurement from this circle, it's already in the corners in its own right because of the existing lines. So this kind of idea that these circles and proportions are already within an easy to find grid is really satisfying. So I'm doing this just at the numbered points, so it's hitting the second one in. So I'm going to put in the full circle, and then you can see it's hitting 2 points. And what's really beautiful, oh, you're going to love this, is that there's a second circle that we can get to get the inner points, and that's already in the secrets of the corners. So cool. So I mean, you know, is this an efficient method for drawing what I'm drawing? Perhaps not, because there's a lot of lines. Oh, that one's a bit off. And the thing is, I know this line's a bit off because look, it's a little bit off here as well. You revealed yourself, cheeky monkey. This 10 pointed star, because we had all 10, we could join them and it would be easily done. But here we've only got, what we've got, only 6 of the divisions that are here. So therefore we're a little bit stuck. So therefore, if we take the measurement of the inner points and transfer them to the corners, what you'll find is they actually are already existing as a proportion. So it's those 2 lines there, which is so beautiful, because you know, you're doing the geometry and you realize that, you know, this isn't something that you've sort of made necessarily. What do I mean? As in, it's you're uncovering it. I once had a maths lesson, forgive me for my tangent, but one of my students, I was in the middle of doing some maths examples, and students love to interrupt in the middle of that with some random question. And one of my students asked, "Miss, what came first, maths or English?" And at first I was like, "Oh, Cameron, you know, like, can we get on with this lesson?" And then I thought, actually, what an excellent question. And I still contemplate that question, like, in life. And my conclusion, or one of my conclusions over the many times I've contemplated it, is that, you know, language is what we as humans use to communicate and describe our world, our surroundings, our creativity. You know, it's so rich in what it can give us. But mathematics, are we not just always uncovering truths that have pre-existed, right? Like the pre-existing truth that is in a circle divided into 10, and all these circles were already there in their proportions. Anyway, it's such a great thing to think about. Okay, all right, let's draw in. So in my little chit chat there, I did manage to attach some tracing paper with masking tape and pick a new short little pencil and outline the pentagon. Okay, so once we've done that, what we're going to do is we're going to pick out this 10 pointed star here and on the corners. And what I want you to always remember with the corners is when it is on the side of the pentagon, it starts on the outer. So always out, in, out, in, out, in, out. Okay, and once you've got that, you can get into a rhythm and draw it nicely. I'm just switching to a short ruler so I can do the out in business without too much faffing. That's quite an inefficient way of doing it. If you want to do it 2 lines at a time, then please do. Okay, so that's all of the stars done. Now we're going to do the 5 partial dodecagons. Not dodecagons, decagons. And then the 1 central one as well. So the ones around the side, they use these little red lines. And now we're actually treating them like decagons as opposed to kind of making them a bit more uniform as we did in the previous pattern. Oh, let's do the central one, shall we? Nearly forgot about this guy. Next, we're going to put in the outer dodecagon. And another way of thinking about this is, yes, it goes through the tips of the purple lines, but it's the centers. These are connecting the centers of the pentagons. And if you can just see the pentagons, it really helps, because the pentagons are like these centers which have spokes leaving them, and the spokes kind of connect to each other but also connect outwardly. So the thing that I'm drawing now, although you can think of them as the pentagons, it's as though we're completing the second decagon for our 5 outer ones. So the way we describe what we're drawing and how we visualize it, oh, it's just so fascinating to have so many different ways to think of it. Now I need my big ruler, because we're going to go from the corners of the pentagon through the center all the way across. So these 5 lines, super satisfying. So you know the spokes that are coming out from here, we need to start doing those. And a good way of doing it is if you go from the center of 10 through to the side, and then you can connect it to the center of 2. So it's like a 5-pointed star sitting within this grid. So many hidden shapes. So now the spokes, or the 10 points at the center, we're going to go outward to the center of the pentagons, and we can do these 2 at a time. So lining up both sides helps make it a little bit far more uniform than doing them individually. And then finally we'll do the same for the outer one. So if you look, everything's complete on that center, and here we've got these gaps. So if you look at the spokes, you're going to go outward. The order in which I chose to do it was more because it was beautiful in terms of how it was revealing itself. Might not be entirely logical. And there we have it, our second pattern, which you can keep as a pentagon, which is fine, or quite beautifully turn into a 5-pointed star. Finding this star involves getting rid of a slim triangle on each side of the pentagon. And talking of triangles, they are so handy in accessing how we tile this pattern, or basically any pattern. So more specifically, the minimal triangle, it's one which contains all the information, shapes and pattern, and it usually has stars in 2 or more of its corners, and it's then repeated by rotation or reflection to create a fuller pattern, either by circular or rectangular tiling. Now, I can't talk about Ottoman patterns without mentioning my Turkish friend and geometer Serap Kizler Sonmez, who is always so generous in sending me diagrams and photos and just having great discussions with about geometry. So have a look at this little diagram, which is so rich in what it tells you. It's a slightly different construction, but it shows you how this pattern is related to others in the family. And this is the kind of thing that really blows my mind, because it gives you the key to the secrets, to the relationships and so on. So it's a brilliant one to enjoy. Okay, let's get on to tiling. The piece of paper that I just ripped off to get my tracing paper. I'm just giving it one fold, and then it has to be a mountain fold, and my position is so that I can line up this with my vertical, and I basically want this bottom quarter, so this rectangle is what I'm after. Okay, so this might get a little bit fiddly, we'll see how we go. We're going to draw the full line there, and we're not going to draw the full line here, we're just going to go to the outer circle, and then we're going to do a triangular tile, and everything within this triangle we need, but there's a little gap here from where there's a gap in the drawing, so be careful of that, because if you add in that line it'll get very annoying later on. Okay, and that's why having the underline grid is very useful, because you're using the information outside of the tile. So this is what you're after, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to, in a way, turn it upside down to get the rest of it. So can you see how just by turning the tracing upside down I can redraw what I just did, and I'll get the rectangle. So then this is now our repeating unit, but as with most repeating units you do need a little bit of symmetry. So the first thing we need to do is redraw this on the other side of the fold, and then it will be something that you can tile easily, in terms of like just no effort or drama. So then we have half of the pattern. If I turn this back over to my original drawing, okay, so what we have, the initial drawing, and from that I took the triangle and then took another triangle but made sure I rotated it and then folded it. If I just show you how it's done, so 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6, and you have a rectangular tiling. So the last one in the gang. Okay, so one construction leading to 1, 2, 3 outcomes. Really quite nice. Enjoy.